Have you ever felt tired, scattered, or stuck, no matter how hard you try to get ahead? Maybe your days feel too busy, but you rarely feel proud of what actually gets done. If so, you're not alone. Most advice tells us to fix this by doing more. Add a new habit, chase another goal, get busier. But what if the real answer is to do less and gently let go of what holds you back? This book began with a simple idea. Sometimes the fastest way forward is by removing things quietly weighing us down. Over the years, I've seen that real change often comes not from piling on more, but by cutting away the stuff that drains our time, energy, and focus. Don't tell anyone. 7 things you must quietly remove from your life is here to help you clear that hidden clutter. Inside, you'll find ways to spot the people, habits, and routines that quietly pull you off track, even when you don't realize it. You'll learn a simple system to help you decide what to keep, what to limit, and what to let go. There are no dramatic confrontations or big scenes required, just small steps that open up space for what matters most to you. You'll see how healthy boundaries bring freedom, why comparing yourself to others steals your joy, and how to rewrite old labels and stories about who you are. The best part? These moves are quiet and practical, and you can start anytime, even if change makes you nervous. This book is for anyone craving less stress and more peace, less noise, and more meaning. Each small change adds up, and you'll be surprised how much lighter you feel when you simply remove what no longer serves you. If you're ready for a new kind of reset, not by adding, but by subtracting, let's get started. Chapter 1: Silent Reset. You're doing everything right. You show up, you handle your responsibilities, you respond to messages, you keep promises. From the outside, your life looks functional, maybe even impressive. But inside you're running on fumes. You wake up already tired. You go to bed wired, mind racing through tomorrow's demands before today even ends. You're busy, constantly busy, yet when you look back at your week, you can't point to anything that truly moved the needle. You're maintaining, not building, surviving, not thriving. Here's what nobody tells you. The problem isn't that you're lazy or broken. The problem is that your life has become a landfill of invisible drains. People who take more than they give, habits that steal your focus in 2-minute intervals, obligations you agreed to years ago that no longer serve you, and stories you tell yourself that keep you small. Every single one of these drains is quietly siphoning your attention, your energy, and your time. And because they're invisible, you blame yourself instead of the system. This chapter is your X-ray. We're going to expose exactly how your current life is built on accumulated yeses, outdated commitments, and unchallenged narratives. And then we're going to hand you a method to change it, not by adding more discipline, more hustle, or more self-improvement projects, but by removing what doesn't belong. The invisible overload. Let's start with the truth. You're living in constant invisible overload. You feel busy, but rarely make meaningful progress. Your to-do list grows faster than you can cross things off. You're reacting to messages, demands, and crises instead of directing your day. You're a firefighter, not an architect. This isn't an accident. Your attention is being spent on too many low-quality things. Every notification is a transaction. Every draining conversation is a withdrawal from your mental bank account. Every unfinished project sitting in the corner of your room is a tiny voice whispering, "You never follow through." And because you've never been taught to subtract, you just keep adding more apps, more commitments, more tabs open in your browser and your brain. Then there are the relationships. You know the ones. The friend who only calls when they need something. The family member who guilt trips you into showing up to events you dread. The colleague who turns every conversation into a therapy session. After every interaction, you feel drained, guilty, or confused. You tell yourself you're being a good person by staying. But good people don't have to feel this bad this often. And it's not just people, it's the habits you've normalized. Scrolling for just 5 minutes that turns into an hour, engaging in gossip that leaves you feeling dirty, doom-thinking your way through every decision until you're paralyzed. These habits don't feel like drains because they're woven into your routine. But they are. They're quietly consuming your focus, one microdose at a time. Finally, there's the clutter. Physical clutter, the piles on your desk, the closet you can't close, the drawer full of cables you'll definitely need someday. Digital clutter, 47 browser tabs, 12,000 unread emails, apps you haven't opened in months but can't bring yourself to delete. Mental clutter, the open loops, the unresolved conversations, the decisions you've been avoiding for weeks. All of it sits there, demanding a piece of your brain's processing power, even when you're trying to focus on something else. The compound effect of doing nothing. If you keep going like this, here's what happens. The clutter compounds. More obligations pile up, more open tabs, more unfinished projects. Chronic stress stops being a phase and becomes your default setting. You start taking smaller and smaller risks because you feel like you have no capacity left. You stop believing your own promises. You adopt a victim story. Life just happens to me. Your identity shrinks. You start to see yourself as the kind of person who never follows through. You stop setting big goals because aiming hurts too much when you know you won't hit the target. You settle into mediocrity, not because you chose it, but because you're too exhausted to fight for anything better. Your relationships suffer. You resent the people you secretly allowed to take too much. You miss opportunities because you didn't have the bandwidth to say yes to the right things. You become known as overwhelmed, disorganized, unreliable, even though you care deeply. The gap between who you are and who you want to be grows wider every year. What changes when you start removing? But here's the other side of the equation. When you start treating removal as a skill, everything shifts. You build a clear map of your drains. You name the specific relationships, habits, and inputs that are costing you peace. You understand how each one shows up in your daily life. And then you start cutting. You downgrade or remove 2 to 3 key drains. You implement one boundary rule around your time and availability. You simplify one physical or digital space that affects you every day. And suddenly, you have breathing room, days with fewer surprises, less chaos, easier decision-making because less noise competes for your attention. Over time, the wins compound. You start trusting yourself to act, not just think about acting. You're no longer scared to say no to misaligned demands. You set bigger, more honest goals because you feel capable. You attract healthier relationships because your standards are clear. You notice and seize better opportunities because you're not drowning in busy work. You become known as grounded, focused, and reliable. The 5-step system. Here's the method you'll use throughout this book. It's simple, repeatable, and designed to work even when you're tired, stressed, or doubting yourself. Step 1. Spot. Learn to identify repeating drains, people, patterns, narratives, clutter, noise. Notice how you feel after interactions and activities. Lighter or heavier, energized or exhausted. Pay attention to micro regrets, those moments when you think, why did I agree to that again? Step 2. Measure. Estimate the energy cost, how drained or energized you feel afterward. Estimate the time cost, how much of your day this thing consumes. Estimate the emotional cost, guilt, anger, resentment, anxiety. This step turns vague frustration into clear data. Step 3. Decide. Use 3 simple categories: cut, contain, limit, or commit upgrade. Ask yourself, does this thing earn its place in my future? Prioritize the biggest drains first for faster relief. Step 4. Remove quietly. Downgrade access. You don't always need confrontation. Change routines, routes, and default settings to make drains harder to reach you. Replace a drain with something better to avoid empty space pulling you backward. Step 5. Reinforce. Create simple rules and boundaries you follow automatically. Review and adjust monthly as your life evolves. Celebrate small wins to lock in the new identity. I am someone who protects my energy. Why this order matters. You can't cut what you can't see. Spotting first brings vague frustration into clear awareness. It reduces self-blame. You see the pattern, not just your flaws. It prevents random emotional decisions and encourages thoughtful choices. Measurement before action reveals your highest leverage moves. It stops you from cutting the wrong things while leaving major drains intact. It turns the process into strategy, not venting. Deciding is the moment you reclaim power from autopilot. Quiet removal, done repeatedly, rewrites your sense of who you are. Reinforcement makes the change durable, not a one-week experiment. Winners versus losers. Winners curate. They treat attention and energy like money, finite, valuable, and worth protecting. They accept short-term discomfort for long-term freedom. They walk away quietly instead of arguing loudly. Losers tolerate. They hope drains will magically fix themselves. They cling to guilt, fear of judgment, and what will they think. They confuse being busy with being effective. Which one are you? Be honest, because this chapter is your line in the sand. Life before quiet reset versus life after. The choice is yours, but the clock is ticking. In the next chapter, we're going to tackle the most emotionally loaded drain of all, the people in your circle who quietly steal your peace. But before we get there, you need to understand something. The wrong people don't just waste your time. They reshape your entire life in ways you don't even notice until it's too late. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to Grow to the Top and activate notifications to receive more self-improvement tips that will supercharge your growth. And make sure to give this video a thumbs up and share it with your friends. It really helps the channel grow. Thank you for your support. Chapter 2. Cut the Takers. There's a person in your life right now who drains you. You know exactly who I'm talking about. The one whose name on your phone screen makes your stomach tighten. The one who turns every conversation into their crisis. The one who takes and takes and takes, and somehow you're the one who feels guilty for noticing. You tell yourself it's fine. They're going through a hard time. They've always been there for you. Well, that one time, years ago. You've known them forever. Cutting them off would be cruel. So you stay. You answer the calls. You show up. You give advice they never take. And every single time, you walk away feeling emptier than when you arrived. Here's what you need to understand. That feeling isn't an accident. It's data. And if you keep ignoring it, it will cost you more than you realize. The hidden tax on your life. Your circle isn't neutral. The people closest to you don't just occupy space in your calendar. They actively shape who you become. This isn't motivational fluff. It's basic psychology. Emotional contagion is real. You absorb the moods, beliefs, and standards of the people you spend the most time with. Their normal becomes your normal. Their excuses become your excuses. Their ceiling becomes your ceiling. If your circle normalizes drama, gossip, and low effort, you will drift there even if you know better. You'll start making excuses for behavior you'd never tolerate from a stranger. You'll lower your standards to keep the peace. You'll find yourself participating in conversations that make you feel dirty afterward, but you'll do it anyway because that's just how we are. And here's the part nobody talks about. Emotional energy is a limited resource. Every draining conversation, every guilt trip, every argument that goes nowhere, it all costs you. You pay for every toxic interaction with lost clarity, lost patience, and lost capacity for the things that actually matter. You think you're being a good friend by staying available, but you're not. You're being a bad steward of your own life. The cost compounds. Chronic resentment you never express. Lost time for real friendships and meaningful work. Erosion of self-respect every time you tolerate disrespect. You start to feel like a supporting character in someone else's drama instead of the main character in your own story. The takers you're tolerating. Let's get specific. There are 3 types of people quietly stealing your peace, and you need to learn to spot them. First, the chronic complainers. These are the people who never take responsibility. Everything is always happening to them. Their boss is terrible. Their partner doesn't understand them. The world is unfair. They'll spend hours dissecting their problems with you, but the moment you offer a solution, they'll explain why it won't work. They don't want help. They want an audience for their suffering. And you keep showing up because you think that's what loyalty looks like. Second, the emotional manipulators. These are the subtle ones. They use guilt, pity, or anger to control you. They'll say things like, "I guess I'm just not important to you anymore," when you can't drop everything for them. They'll remind you of past favors as leverage for current demands. They'll weaponize their helplessness, making you feel responsible for their emotional state. And because you're a decent person who doesn't want to hurt anyone, you fall for it. Every single time. Third, the fake friends. These are the people who only appear when they need something. They're MIA when you're struggling, but the moment they need a favor, a connection, or an ego boost, suddenly you're best friends again. They treat you like a vending machine. Insert attention, receive validation, and you let them because you're afraid that saying no means you're a bad person. The myths keeping you stuck. You think you need a big confrontation to end these relationships. You imagine some dramatic scene where you finally tell them off, lay out all their flaws, and walk away victorious. But here's the truth. Dramatic showdowns rarely work. They almost always escalate. Takers are experts at turning conflict into proof that you're the problem. They'll twist your words, play the victim, and drag you back into their narrative. You'll end up apologizing for trying to protect yourself. You also think that cutting people is mean or selfish. But there's a difference between cruelty and self-respect. Cruelty is attacking someone for sport. Self-respect is refusing to let someone treat you poorly. Staying in a relationship out of guilt helps no one. It doesn't make you noble. It makes you a volunteer prisoner. And then there's the big one. If I leave, they'll fall apart, and it'll be my fault. This is the lie that keeps you trapped. You're not responsible for other adults' emotional regulation. You're not their therapist, their parent, or their savior. Rescuing them doesn't help them grow. It keeps both of you stuck. They never learn to stand on their own, and you never get to build the life you actually want. The quiet removal strategy. So how do you actually do this? Not with explosions, with subtraction. Start with a relationship audit. Take out a piece of paper or open a note on your phone. List the key people you see or talk to weekly. Now, next to each name, ask yourself, how do I feel after we interact? Lighter or heavier? Energized or drained? Be brutally honest. This isn't about whether they're good people. It's about whether they're good for you. Rate each interaction on a simple scale. Energy gained or energy lost? Emotional aftertaste, clean or dirty? Then label each person with one of three categories: cut, contain, or commit. Cut means you're done. This relationship needs to end. Contain means you're limiting access. You'll still interact, but on your terms and in smaller doses. Commit means you're doubling down. This person earns their place in your life, and you're going to invest more here. Once you've labeled them, it's time for quiet distancing. This is where most people mess up. They think they need permission or a perfect reason. You don't. You just start responding slower. Create time gaps between messages. Decline invitations more often with simple, honest reasons. I'm focusing on some personal priorities and won't be as available. Stop initiating contact. Let the relationship reveal its true shape. If it was one-sided, it will fade naturally. If it was real, it will adjust. You'll need some boundary scripts. Keep them short and firm. I'm not the right person for this conversation anymore. I don't want to talk about people who aren't here. I need to focus on my own stuff right now. Don't over-explain. Over-explaining invites negotiation. State your boundary once, then change the subject or end the conversation. Making space for better. Here's the part most people miss. You can't just remove, you have to replace. If you cut takers but leave the space empty, you'll get lonely and backslide. So fill that freed up time intentionally. Skill building, restorative activities. Seek communities where mutual support is the norm, not the exception. Initiate more with your best people, the ones who challenge you with respect, who bring calm and perspective, who support your growth without drama. Track your emotional gains. After each interaction, rate your energy on a scale of 1 to 10. Notice patterns after a few weeks. Adjust access accordingly. Celebrate days with fewer draining interactions. This isn't petty scorekeeping. It's data-driven self-respect. What winning looks like. At first, you'll just notice fewer draining conversations in your week. Reduced anxiety when your phone rings. Feeling lighter and calmer after social interactions. That's good. Then it gets better. You'll build a small circle of people who genuinely support and uplift you. You'll have more time to invest in personal goals and meaningful hobbies. You'll develop a reputation for calm, stability, and emotional maturity. That's excellent. But the best outcome? Your environment actively pulls you upward into better decisions. You have the courage to leave unhealthy relationships early before they cost you years. You become a builder for others because you're no longer drained by takers. You stop tolerating what you used to accept. And that shift changes everything. When it gets hard, you will feel guilt. You'll second-guess yourself. You'll wonder if you're being harsh or selfish. When that happens, revisit your energy notes. Remember the real cost. Remind yourself that protecting your energy helps you show up better for the people who actually deserve you. Some people will push back. They'll accuse you of changing or thinking you're better. Stay calm. Repeat your boundary once. Don't debate your decisions. Limit explanations. Over-explaining invites negotiations you don't owe anyone. And yes, there will be a loneliness gap. You've cut or reduced, but new people haven't arrived yet. Use this gap wisely. Rebuild your skills, your health habits, your self-respect. Intentionally place yourself in new environments where better fits are likely. The gap is temporary. The growth is permanent. The people you keep in your life aren't just names in your phone. They're the invisible architects of your future. Choose them like your life depends on it, because it does. But even after you've cleared the takers from your circle, there's another thief stealing your life in plain sight, one you've been handing the keys to every single day without realizing it. Chapter 3. Own your time. You said yes again. You didn't want to. You knew you shouldn't. But when they asked, something in you just folded. Maybe it was the way they framed it as urgent. Maybe it was the guilt that flashed through your mind when you imagined saying no. Maybe you told yourself it would only take a few minutes, even though you know better. So you said yes. Again. And now your calendar is a graveyard of your own priorities. The project you promised yourself you'd start? Pushed to next week. The quiet hour you needed to think? Gone. The evening you were going to spend recharging? Filled with someone else's crisis that somehow became your responsibility. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Your time isn't being stolen. You're giving it away. And until you understand why you keep doing that, nothing will change. The currency you can't earn back. Money comes and goes. You can lose it and make it back. You can invest it poorly and recover. But time is the one resource that's genuinely non-refundable. Every unwanted yes you give is a permanent withdrawal from your future. You're not just losing hours, you're losing the compound interest of what those hours could have built. When you treat your time as cheap, your life starts to feel cheap. You end up living in a constant state of reactive chaos, bouncing from one person's emergency to another, never quite getting to the things that would actually move your life forward. And the worst part, the people you're saying yes to don't even respect you more for it. They sense that you don't respect your own time, so why should they? This is the hidden cost of people-pleasing. Chronic resentment builds up like plaque in your arteries. You're burning out from overserving others while your own goals sit untouched. Every time you betray yourself by saying yes when you mean no, you chip away at your self-confidence. You stop trusting your own word. You become someone who makes promises to yourself that you know you won't keep. And then there's the fake urgency. Your day gets hijacked by other people's emergencies that aren't really emergencies at all. Someone needs your input right now. Someone needs a favor today. Someone needs to talk immediately. Meanwhile, the important but quiet tasks, your health, your learning, your long-term projects, get pushed to tomorrow, and tomorrow never comes. You confuse frantic busyness with meaningful progress, and years slip by while you're stuck in maintenance mode. The reflex you need to break. The problem starts with a reflex, automatic yes. Someone asks, and before you've even thought about it, you've agreed. It happens so fast you don't even notice. This reflex was probably trained into you early. Be helpful, be nice, don't disappoint people, don't make waves. These aren't bad values, but they've been weaponized against you. Breaking this reflex means introducing a pause before every commitment. When someone asks for your time, your default response needs to become, "Let me check my calendar and get back to you." Not maybe, not probably, just a simple acknowledgement that you need to think before you commit. This pause is where you reclaim your power. But here's what makes it hard. You have to learn to sit with the discomfort of potentially disappointing others. That discomfort is what's been controlling you. You say yes to avoid the feeling of letting someone down. You say yes to avoid conflict. You say yes because you're terrified that if you don't, they'll think less of you, or worse, they'll leave. The truth is, some of them will. And that's okay, because the people who only stick around when you're endlessly available aren't your people. They're users, and you don't need users. You need relationships built on mutual respect, where both people's time matters. Rewriting the rules of access. Right now, you're probably operating under the assumption that you should be available to everyone, all the time, for anything. That's not a boundary. That's a doormat. You need to decide when you are reachable and for what. Not based on guilt, not based on fear, based on what actually serves your life. Start by separating real emergencies from manufactured ones. A real emergency is life or death serious. A manufactured emergency is someone else's poor planning becoming your crisis. "I need this by end of day" is not an emergency if they've known about it for a week. "Can you help me with this real quick?" is not an emergency if it's the third time this week. Once you've made that distinction, you can start creating time blocks to protect your best work. Choose 1 or 2 hours each day, your golden hours, when you do your most important work. These hours are non-negotiable. No meetings, no calls, no quick questions. You block them in your calendar, and you treat them like you'd treat a meeting with the most important person in your life. Because you are. Then, you rebuild your week around what actually matters to you. Your calendar should reflect your priorities, not other people's plans. If your health matters, there should be time blocked for movement and rest. If your growth matters, there should be time blocked for learning and thinking. If your relationships matter, there should be time blocked for the people who actually deserve your attention. Everything else is negotiable. The lies you've been believing. You probably think that once you catch up, you'll set boundaries. Once you finish this project, once things calm down, once you get through this busy season, then you'll start protecting your time. But here's the reality. You will never catch up under your current habits. Catching up is a moving target. The moment you clear one thing, 3 more appear. Boundaries don't come after you catch up. Boundaries create the conditions that allow you to catch up. You also think that if you say no, people will hate you. But reasonable people respect clear limits. They might be momentarily disappointed, but they'll adjust. The people who get angry when you set boundaries, they're the ones who were benefiting from you not having any. And chronic yesing doesn't earn you love. It breeds quiet contempt. People lose respect for those who don't respect themselves. And then there's the big one. You think being busy means you're important. You wear your packed calendar like a badge of honor, but you're confusing motion with progress. High performers don't brag about how busy they are. They protect their free time aggressively because they know that's where the real work happens. Importance isn't measured by volume, it's measured by impact. The system that protects you. So how do you actually do this? You need a system, not willpower. Willpower fails when you're tired, stressed, or caught off guard. Systems run automatically. First, adopt the pause, prioritize, respond framework. When someone asks for your time, pause. Never commit on the spot unless it's truly critical. Then prioritize. Ask yourself, does this support my top 3 priorities? If it doesn't, it's a no. If it does, decide whether it's worth the trade-off. Then respond with clarity. Agree, decline, or reschedule. No waffling, no maybes that drag on for days. Second, create default boundary rules that you follow automatically. No same-day favors unless it's genuinely life or death serious. No meetings without a clear agenda and end time. No quick calls during your chosen deep work blocks. These rules remove the decision from the moment. You're not being mean. You're following your system. Third, protect your golden hours like your life depends on them. Block them in your calendar. Communicate them to key people so expectations are clear. When someone tries to schedule over them, you say, "I'm not available then. I have time at X or Y." You don't explain. You don't apologize. You just redirect. Making it stick. Here's a trick that will save you. Use "let me get back to you" as your default response. This buys you thinking time instead of forcing an automatic yes. Use that time to actually check your calendar and your priorities. Then decide without pressure. Reply from intention, not fear. When you do say no, offer alternatives instead of excuses. "I can't do X, but I can send you a resource that might help." "I'm not available this week, but I have time next Tuesday afternoon." Keep it short, keep it firm. Avoid over-explaining. Over-explaining invites negotiation, and you're not negotiating your boundaries. Anchor your day with one non-negotiable task for yourself. Do it first before you check messages or email. This sets the tone. You're in charge of your day, not your inbox. Then end each day with a brief review. What stole your time today? Adjust your boundary rules weekly based on what you notice. This isn't a one-time fix, it's an ongoing practice. What victory looks like. At first, you'll just notice fewer last-minute requests derailing your schedule. Your days and evenings will feel more predictable. You'll feel slightly more in control of your calendar. That's good. Then it gets better. You'll start regularly completing your most important tasks. Your stress will drop because you'll know when you'll work and when you'll rest. Colleagues and loved ones will start respecting your time boundaries because you've trained them to. That's excellent. But the best outcome? Your schedule becomes a reflection of your values, not other people's whims. Major projects move from idea to completion consistently. You become known as focused, effective, and reliable. And that reputation opens doors to bigger opportunities, the kind that only come to people who've proven they can protect their own time. When the system breaks, you'll mess up, you'll overcorrect at first, and start saying no to almost everything. When that happens, reintroduce yeses for aligned, mutually beneficial opportunities. Schedule space for spontaneity within clear boundaries. The goal isn't isolation, it's intention. Some people will push back. They'll question your new priorities or call you selfish. Stay calm. Repeat your rules without defending or justifying too much. Let your consistency and improved results speak for themselves. The right people will adjust. The wrong people will leave. Both outcomes are wins. And when you're overwhelmed, you'll backslide. You'll revert to automatic yes. When that happens, keep a visible reminder of your core rules near your phone or computer. Review 1 week each month and reset any broken boundaries. This isn't about perfection. It's about direction. Your time is the raw material of your life. Protect it like it matters. Because once you've cleared the takers and reclaimed your calendar, you'll face a different kind of thief, one that lives inside your own head and whispers that everyone else's life is better than yours. Chapter 4. Stop comparing. You scroll, just for a minute, just to see what's happening. And there it is. Someone you went to school with just bought a house. Someone from work just got promoted. Someone you barely know is on vacation again, their third this year. And suddenly, without warning, your own life feels smaller, cheaper, like you're falling behind in a race you didn't even know you were running. You close the app. You tell yourself it doesn't matter. You tell yourself you're happy for them. But the feeling lingers, that quiet ache, that sense that everyone else figured something out that you're still missing, that maybe you're not doing enough, that maybe you're not enough. This isn't jealousy in the traditional sense. It's something more insidious. It's the constant mental scoreboard that runs in the background of your life, measuring your wins against everyone else's highlight reel. And it's killing you slowly, one scroll at a time. The silent motivation killer. Here's what comparison does. It makes effort feel pointless. When you're constantly measuring yourself against people who seem miles ahead, every step forward feels like nothing. You either overcompensate, pushing yourself into burnout trying to catch up, or you underperform out of despair, thinking, what's the point? Either way, you lose. Comparison turns every win into not enough. You finish a project you're proud of, but someone else finished 3. You hit a personal milestone, but someone else hit it younger, faster, better. The goalpost keeps moving because you're not measuring against your own progress. You're measuring against an infinite stream of other people's best moments. And then there's the trap of external validation. You start doing things not because they align with who you are, but because they'll look good. You choose projects based on how impressive they'll sound. You make decisions based on what will get likes, comments, attention. Your mood swings with the metrics. A post that flops ruins your day. A comment that stings replays in your head for weeks. You lose touch with what you actually want because you're too busy chasing what looks good to other people. The worst part? You're comparing your full story. The messy behind the scenes, the doubts, the failures, the boring Tuesday afternoons to other people's edited highlight reels. You rarely see the struggle. You don't see the rejections they faced, the nights they cried, the years of work that led to that one shiny moment. Your baseline for normal becomes completely unrealistic. And then you punish yourself for not measuring up to a standard that doesn't even exist. The comparison loops you're stuck in. Let's get specific about what needs to go. There are certain accounts you follow that consistently trigger envy, self-doubt, or rage. You know which ones. The person who seems to have it all, the influencer whose life looks effortless, the peer who's always one step ahead. Every time you see their content, you feel worse about yourself, and yet you keep following them. Why? Because unfollowing feels like admitting defeat. It feels like you're jealous or petty. But here's the truth. Curating your inputs isn't weakness, it's strategy. You wouldn't drink poison just because it's in a pretty bottle. So why consume content that consistently makes you feel inadequate? Then there are the environments that encourage status contests. Certain social circles, certain group chats, certain networking events where everyone's performing success instead of building it. You spend time in these spaces and walk away feeling drained, competitive, and small. These aren't neutral environments, they're comparison factories, and you need to reduce your time there. The hardest part is recognizing when a comparison spiral is starting. It's subtle. You're scrolling, and suddenly you're 3 profiles deep into someone's vacation photos, mentally calculating how they afford it. Or you're at a gathering, and instead of enjoying the conversation, you're ranking yourself against everyone in the room. The spiral starts small, but it compounds fast. And by the time you notice, you've already lost an hour to feeling bad about yourself. The myths keeping you trapped. You probably think the solution is to just stop caring what people think. But that's unrealistic. Humans are wired to care about status. It's evolutionary. The goal isn't zero caring, it's caring selectively. You need to learn to value the opinions of a chosen few people who actually know you, respect you, and want the best for you. Not the crowd, not the algorithm, not strangers who wouldn't recognize you on the street. You might also think that if you quit social media, comparison will disappear. But comparison doesn't live in apps. It lives in your head. It happens at work when you see who got the promotion. It happens in families when you hear about your cousin's achievements. It happens in friend groups when someone announces their engagement. Deleting apps without changing your mindset just shifts the arena. You need internal rules, not just external restrictions. And here's the big one. You think that once you reach a certain level, once you get the job, the house, the relationship, the followers, you'll feel secure. But that's not how it works. New level, new comparison group. The people who have what you want are comparing themselves to people who have even more. Achievement without inner work often amplifies insecurity because now you're competing in a bigger league with higher stakes. Security doesn't come from metrics. It comes from identity and values, building a new scoreboard. So how do you actually stop? You start by designing comparison-free zones in your day. Choose specific times where you do not check feeds or status markers. Mornings and late nights are key protection windows. Your first thoughts of the day and your last thoughts before sleep shouldn't be about how you stack up against strangers. Use those windows for your own planning and reflection instead. Then you curate your inputs ruthlessly. Unfollow or mute accounts that trigger envy, self-doubt, or rage. Follow builders, teachers, and realists instead of flex-only profiles. People who show the process, not just the results. People who admit struggle. People who make you think instead of making you feel inadequate. And if you have competitive friends whose progress check-ins consistently derail you, limit those interactions. Real friends will understand. Users will complain. The most important shift is building self-referenced metrics. Stop tracking likes, followers, and how you compare to others. Start tracking personal baselines, your habits, your output, your quality. Compare yourself to last week or last month, not to strangers. Did you show up more consistently? Did you take a risk you were avoiding? Did you handle a setback better than you would have 6 months ago? Those are the wins that matter. Celebrate internal wins, consistency, courage, and integrity. These don't get applause, they don't trend, but they compound. And over time, they build a life that feels good from the inside, not just one that looks good from the outside. Reframing the sting. Here's a trick that will save you. When envy hits, don't fight it. Use it. Ask yourself, what does this person have that I secretly want? The answer is data. Maybe it's freedom. Maybe it's recognition. Maybe it's creative expression. Use that answer to clarify your own goals. Turn envy into a to-do list, not a self-attack. You also need short, pattern-breaking phrases you can use in real time. When you catch yourself spiraling, interrupt with, "Good for them, now back to me." Or, "This is a trailer, not the full movie." Or, "I don't need their path to live my purpose." These aren't affirmations, they're redirects. They pull your attention back to your own lane. And keep a proof file of progress, a simple list of weekly wins and micro improvements. Review it when comparison hits hardest. Use it to remind yourself how far you've actually come, because you have come far. You just can't see it when you're too busy looking at everyone else. What winning looks like. At first, you'll just notice less emotional sting when you see others succeeding. The comparison spirals will be shorter. You'll recover faster. You'll scroll more neutrally instead of turning every session into a self-hate spiral. That's good. Then it gets better. You'll feel genuinely proud of your own trajectory. You'll stay focused on your goals even when others post big wins. You'll post less but build more, and you'll actually like that trade. That's excellent. But the best outcome? You move boldly without needing public approval first. You design a life aligned with your values, not trends. You see others' success as inspiring, not threatening. Your circle becomes more collaborative than competitive because you're not playing a zero-sum game anymore. When you slip, you will slip. You'll delete apps in a dramatic purge, then reinstall them a week later and binge. When that happens, implement moderate, sustainable rules instead of extremes. Pair time limits with intentional purpose when you log in. Ask yourself, what am I here to do? Then do that and leave. You'll also start comparing yourself to new targets, the wholesome accounts, the productive influencers, the perfect minimalists. Remember, these are still curated. Nobody posts their whole truth. Refocus on your personal baselines whenever you catch yourself ranking. And during stressful times, you'll relapse into old patterns. You'll scroll more and compare harder. When that happens, notice the trigger. Close the app, switch to a replacement action. Walk, journal, call a builder friend. Use relapses as data, not proof you're broken. Adjust your rules and keep going. Your life isn't a performance. It's not a competition. It's yours. And the moment you stop measuring it against everyone else's is the moment you can actually start building something real. But even after you've stopped comparing yourself to others, there's still one story you tell yourself that keeps you stuck. A story so familiar, you don't even notice it's running anymore. Chapter 5. Drop the victim. Something happened to you. Maybe it was unfair. Maybe it was cruel. Maybe you didn't deserve it. And ever since, you've been telling the story. To yourself, to your friends, to anyone who will listen. The story of how you got screwed over, how they let you down, how the system failed you, how life just keeps happening to you. And here's the thing. The story might be completely true, every word of it, but it's also the story that's keeping you stuck. You don't see it yet. You think you're just being honest about what happened. You think you're processing. You think you're standing up for yourself by refusing to let it go. But what you're actually doing is rehearsing powerlessness. Every time you tell the story, you reinforce the belief that you're at the mercy of forces beyond your control, and that belief is quietly destroying your life. The story that steals your future. Let's talk about what happens when you live in victim mode. Not the dramatic, obvious kind where you're constantly crying for sympathy. The quiet kind. The kind where you've built an entire identity around what was done to you, what you didn't get, and why things never work out. This story becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. When you believe nothing ever works for me, you stop trying as hard. You sabotage opportunities before they can disappoint you. You interpret setbacks as proof that you were right all along. And then you point to those failures as evidence that the universe is against you. The loop tightens. Blaming others freezes your problem-solving ability. When you're focused on who's at fault, you're not focused on what you can do. You spend your energy building a case instead of building a solution. You become an expert in explaining why things went wrong, but you never develop expertise in making things go right. And then there's the slow drain of living in resentment and unfairness mode. You keep a mental ledger of who owes you what, who wronged you, who should have done better. This scorekeeping poisons everything. Your relationships become transactional. Your conversations become complaints. Your entire emotional baseline shifts to bitterness. And bitterness doesn't hurt the people who wronged you. It only hurts you. The comfort that costs everything. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Victimhood gives you something. It gives you emotional comfort. When you're the victim, you're off the hook. You don't have to take risks because it's not your fault. Things are hard. You don't have to change because the problem is external. You get sympathy, attention, and a ready-made excuse for why your life isn't where you want it to be. But that comfort steals your power. There's a difference between validating your pain and worshiping it. Validation says, yes, that was hard. Yes, that hurt. Yes, that wasn't fair. Worship says, that defines me. That's my story forever. That's why I can't move forward. One acknowledges reality. The other builds a shrine to suffering. People who own more responsibility usually get more options. Not because life is fair to them, not because they're luckier, but because they're constantly asking, what can I do about this? Instead of, whose fault is this? That question unlocks action. It reveals leverage. It turns problems into puzzles you can actually solve. And here's what nobody tells you. Chronic complaining shapes how others see and treat you. When you're always the victim, people start to see you as unreliable, dramatic, someone who will find a problem in every solution. They stop offering you opportunities because they assume you'll find a reason it won't work. A responsible identity, on the other hand, attracts higher quality people and chances. People want to work with, invest in, and support those who take ownership. The language that gives you away. Pay attention to the phrases you use. They made me. This always happens to me. I had no choice. These aren't neutral descriptions. They're narratives, and narratives shape reality. When you say they made me, you're erasing your agency. Nobody makes you feel anything. They do something. You interpret it. You respond. There's always a gap between stimulus and response, and that gap is where your power lives. But when you collapse that gap with blame language, you lose access to your power. When you say, this always happens to me, you're not describing a pattern. You're creating one. Your brain is a confirmation bias machine. It looks for evidence to support what you already believe. If you believe you're cursed, you'll notice every setback and ignore every win. You'll turn coincidences into conspiracies. You'll see patterns that don't exist and miss opportunities that do. The habit of telling the same painful story repeatedly is a trap. Every time you retell it, you re-experience the emotions. You re-cement the identity. You train your brain to see yourself as the person this happened to, instead of the person who's moving past it. The story becomes more real than your present, and your present never gets a chance to be different. The shift that changes everything. So what's the alternative? Radical responsibility. And before you panic, let me be clear. This is not about saying everything is your fault. It's not about blaming yourself for things you didn't cause. It's about separating fault from responsibility. Fault is about the past. Who caused the problem? Responsibility is about the future. Who can do something about it now? You might not be at fault for what happened, but you are responsible for what happens next. That's not a burden. That's power. When something goes wrong, do a control scan. List what you can control and what you can't. You can't control what already happened. You can't control other people's choices. You can't control the economy, the weather, or random chance, but you can control your response, your next move, your interpretation, your standards going forward. Circle the smallest controllable part and act on it. Maybe it's sending one email. Maybe it's having one conversation. Maybe it's changing one habit. It doesn't matter how small it is. What matters is that you're moving, because movement breaks the freeze, and the freeze is what keeps you stuck. Then turn your complaints into requests or actions. Notice your top recurring complaints for a week. Write them down. Now, for each one, ask, can I make a request to someone to change this? Can I take an action myself to fix this? If the answer to both is no, consciously choose to let it go. Complaining about things you can't change is just rehearsing helplessness. The daily practice of ownership. Choose one domain each week: money, time, health, or relationships. Take one small responsibility, move daily in that area. Pay off one small debt. Decline one time-wasting commitment. Move your body for 10 minutes. Send one message to repair a relationship. These aren't grand gestures. They're proof. Proof that you can influence your life. Proof that you're not helpless. Track the emotional shift as you see tangible change. This is critical. Your feelings follow your actions, not the other way around. You won't feel powerful and then act. You'll act and then feel powerful. The evidence comes first. The identity follows. And here's a trick that will save you. Whenever you start a victim monologue, interrupt yourself with, "Okay, what now?" This question is a pattern interrupt. It pulls your brain from past replay into present action. It shifts you from narrator to player. Practice it until it becomes your automatic response. When you need to vent. You're human. You'll need to vent. But set a timer. Give yourself 5 minutes to vent to a friend or journal. Get it out. Feel it fully. Then when the timer goes off, switch to solution brainstorming. This trains you not to marinate in problems indefinitely. Venting without a time limit becomes rumination, and rumination is just victim thinking with better vocabulary. You can also rewrite events in your journal. Pick one frustrating event each week and rewrite it from an ownership lens. Highlight your choices, your leverage, and your possible next moves. Notice how this changes your emotional tone over time. The same event, told through a different lens, becomes a completely different story. And the story you tell yourself determines the life you live. What victory looks like. At first, you'll just notice less mental replay of old hurts. You'll recover slightly faster from setbacks and disappointments. People will experience you as calmer and more grounded. That's good. Then it gets better. You'll begin solving problems you used to just complain about. You'll bounce back from rejection, conflict, or failure with clear plans instead of emotional spirals. You'll build a reputation as someone who doesn't make excuses. That's excellent. But the best outcome? You become unshakable. Almost anything that happens triggers a productive response instead of a victim story. You create opportunities others miss because they're too busy blaming. You feel a deep, steady sense of power and responsibility in your own life. Not because nothing bad happens, but because you know you can handle it. When it goes wrong, you'll overcorrect. You'll start taking responsibility for everything, even things that genuinely aren't yours. When that happens, separate facts from emotional interpretations in writing. Ask yourself, what would I say to a friend in this situation? Then apply that same compassion to yourself. Some people won't like the new you. People who were used to venting or blaming with you will feel threatened. Gently redirect conversations toward solutions or shorten them. Accept that some relationships were built on shared victimhood and may fade. That's not a loss, that's an upgrade. And you'll be tempted to take ownership for everyone and everything. Clarify your lane. What's truly yours to carry? What belongs to someone else? Practice saying, "That's not mine to carry," and step back. Responsibility without boundaries is just martyrdom with better branding. Your life isn't a movie where things happen to you. It's a game you can actually play. And the moment you stop narrating and start playing is the moment everything changes. But even after you've reclaimed your power, there's still one environment quietly sabotaging every decision you make, and it's closer than you think. Chapter 6. Clear the noise. You sit down to work. You open your laptop. 17 tabs are already open from yesterday. Your desktop is a graveyard of files with names like Final V3 and Untitled Document. Your phone buzzes. You glance at it. 3 unread messages. 47 unread emails. A notification about a notification. You look back at your screen. What were you about to do again? You try to focus, but your desk is covered in papers, half-empty water bottles, chargers for devices you don't even own anymore. Your mind drifts. You need to respond to that email. You need to pay that bill. You need to call that person back. You need to decide about that thing. The list grows. Your brain feels crowded, heavy, like you're thinking through fog. This isn't laziness. This isn't lack of discipline. This is your environment quietly destroying your ability to think. The silent tax on your brain. Here's what most people don't understand. Your environment isn't neutral. It's either working for you or against you. And right now, it's probably working against you. Messy spaces quietly push you toward procrastination. When your workspace is chaotic, starting feels harder. You have to clear a spot. You have to find what you need. You have to make a dozen micro decisions before you even begin the actual work. And each of those micro decisions costs you. Your brain has a limited amount of processing power, and you're burning it on clutter before you've even started the task that matters. A chaotic environment makes discipline feel impossible. You tell yourself you need more willpower, more focus, more motivation. But the truth is, you're trying to focus in conditions designed to scatter your attention. It's like trying to meditate in a nightclub and then blaming yourself for not being zen enough. The problem isn't you. The problem is the setup. Small environmental tweaks can change behavior without effort. Move the remote, watch less TV, put your phone in another room, sleep better, clear your desk, start work faster. These aren't hacks. They're basic environmental design. And they work because they remove friction instead of relying on you to overcome it every single time. The invisible weight you're carrying. Every open tab is a tiny voice in your head saying, "Don't forget about me." Every pile on your desk is a visual reminder of something unfinished. Every notification is an interruption, even if you don't consciously register it. Your brain is trying to track all of it, and it's exhausting. This is cognitive load. Your brain can only process so much at once. Think of it like RAM on a computer. When you have too many programs running in the background, everything slows down. You get laggy, irritable, forgetful. That's not a character flaw, that's overload. There's a direct link between visual clutter and anxiety. When your environment is chaotic, your nervous system stays slightly activated. You can't fully relax because there's always something in your peripheral vision demanding attention. You might not even notice it consciously, but your body does. And over time, that low-level stress becomes your baseline. Clear spaces produce clearer thinking and better decisions. When your environment is simple, your brain has more bandwidth for the work that actually matters. You make fewer mistakes. You think more strategically. You see solutions you would have missed when you were drowning in noise. And then there's the time cost. Wasted minutes looking for items, passwords, files, increased errors because you're juggling too much in your head. The compounding effect of daily micro delays. You think it's just a few seconds here and there, but those seconds add up to hours. Those hours add up to weeks, and those weeks represent the projects you never started and the goals you never reached. The 3 layers of clutter. Physical clutter is the obvious one. Desks, rooms, bags, and workspaces full of random objects, items kept out of habit, guilt, or just-in-case thinking. You hold on to things because you might need them someday, but someday never comes. And in the meantime, they're taking up space, not just in your room, but in your mind. Creating clean, simple zones where you work and rest isn't about aesthetics, it's about performance. When you have one clear surface where you do your best work, starting becomes automatic. You sit down and your brain knows this is where we focus. No negotiation, no warm-up, just work. Then there's digital noise, notifications, apps, tabs, email overload, information hoarding, saving everything, using nothing. You bookmark articles you'll never read, you download files you'll never open, you subscribe to newsletters you'll never finish, and every single one of those things is a little piece of mental clutter, quietly demanding attention you don't have to give. Designing screens to show only what you need when you need it is a game changer. When you open your computer and see one clean screen with one clear task, you start immediately. When you open your computer and see chaos, you hesitate. You check email, you scroll, you procrastinate. The environment decides. Finally, there's mental clutter. The hardest to see, but the most damaging. Tasks and ideas you're holding in your head instead of capturing somewhere external. Unfinished decisions, unresolved conversations, open loops that your brain keeps cycling back to, trying not to forget. Creating simple routines that keep life predictable and calm isn't boring, it's liberating. When you know what happens when, your brain stops burning energy on planning and starts using it for execution. Routines are the infrastructure of a high-performance life. The lies you tell yourself. You probably think you're just a messy person. That's an identity label, and identity labels keep you stuck. The truth is, you may just lack simple systems. You don't have cleanliness genes or organization genes. You have habits, and habits can change. Building a new identity as someone who values clarity starts with one small proof, one clear surface, one organized drawer, one clean screen. You don't become organized by deciding to be organized. You become organized by acting organized in small, repeatable ways until your brain updates the story it tells about you. You might also think you think better in chaos. And maybe sometimes creative chaos helps. But there's a difference between chaotic creativity and chaotic distraction. One is intentional mess in service of a project. The other is just avoidance in disguise. Experiment with cleaner spaces and test your own results. You might be surprised. And then there's the classic, I'll organize everything once I have time. That mythical free weekend never arrives. There's always something else, always another crisis, always another reason to wait. Meanwhile, the compounding cost of waiting grows. The clutter multiplies, the mental fog thickens, the friction increases. Embrace 10-minute micro resets instead of massive overhauls. You don't need a whole day. You need 2 minutes before bed, 2 minutes before work, 2 minutes at transitions. Those tiny resets, done consistently, create a completely different baseline than waiting for the perfect moment to fix everything. The system that keeps you clear. Start with the one surface rule. Choose one key surface, your desk, your kitchen table, wherever you do your most important work. At the end of each day, reset it to empty or nearly empty. This becomes your clean launchpad. When you sit down the next morning, you're not fighting through yesterday's mess, you're starting fresh. Then apply the one screen rule. Limit yourself to a small number of active tabs and apps when working. Close or hide everything not directly needed for the task at hand. Schedule specific times for email and social media instead of constant checking. Your screen should be a tool, not a distraction factory. Create a weekly reset ritual. Pick a time, Sunday evening, Friday afternoon, whatever works, and spend 20 minutes tidying your main areas and clearing digital clutter. Archive old emails, close finished projects, update your to-do list. Review your upcoming week and make simple plans. This ritual keeps the noise from building back up. Small moves, big shifts. Use containers, not piles. Keep a small number of labeled containers for common items. Reduce visual noise by putting things out of sight but in logical spots. Avoid miscellaneous boxes. Everything needs a clear category. When everything has a home, putting it away becomes automatic instead of a decision. At transitions, before bed, before work, tidy for just 2 minutes. Focus only on the highest impact areas you see most. Over time, you'll enjoy a much higher baseline of order with minimal effort. This isn't about perfection, it's about momentum. When your mind feels crowded, do a brain dump. List everything on paper or in an app. Group items into categories: today, this week, later. Then decide one next step for 1 to 3 items and take it immediately. This clears the mental RAM. Your brain stops trying to hold everything and starts trusting the system. What winning looks like. At first, you'll just notice less visual chaos and fewer random piles, fewer lost items and last-minute panics, a slightly calmer feeling in your main spaces. That's good. Then it gets better. You'll start work sessions quickly with everything ready. Your phone and computer will feel like tools, not traps. You'll experience fewer I forgot moments and missed tasks. That's excellent. But the best outcome? Your environment becomes a silent ally. Focus becomes your default, not something you have to fight for. You make sharp decisions because your brain isn't overloaded. You stand out as organized and reliable, attracting trust and opportunity. People notice. They ask you to lead projects. They recommend you for roles. They trust you with bigger responsibilities, all because you cleared the noise. When it breaks down, you'll hit perfectionism paralysis. You'll wait until you can fix everything properly. When that happens, commit to small, daily improvements instead of total makeovers. Celebrate visible 10% improvements as wins. Progress, not perfection. Spaces will get clean, then quickly messy again. When that happens, identify the root source. Is it mail, laundry, paperwork? Build a small system just for that one thing, and keep your weekly resets non-negotiable. The reset is what prevents the slide back into chaos. You'll also feel guilty or anxious about letting things go. Emotional attachment to stuff and data is real. When that happens, ask, does this serve my future or only my past? And if it's sentimental, take a photo before donating or discarding. You keep the memory, you lose the clutter. Your environment is the stage where your life happens. Clear the stage and the performance improves. But even with a clear stage and a clear mind, there's still one habit that will keep you stuck in the audience instead of on the stage. And it's the one most people never even recognize as a problem. Chapter 7. Kill the delay. You have an idea, a good one. You've been thinking about it for weeks, maybe months. You know exactly what you need to do. You've researched it, you've planned it, you've imagined how good it will feel when it's done. You've told yourself, I'll start on Monday. Then Monday comes and you tell yourself next Monday. Then next Monday comes and you tell yourself once things calm down. Things never calm down, and the idea sits there, aging like milk in the sun. Here's the truth you don't want to hear. You're not waiting for the right time. You're not waiting for more information. You're not waiting to feel ready. You're just waiting. And waiting is how dreams die quietly, one postponed Monday at a time. The graveyard of someday. Let's talk about what delay actually costs you. I'll do it later becomes I never did it, so gradually you don't even notice the shift. One day you're planning to start. The next day, years later, you're explaining to someone why you never did. And the explanation always sounds reasonable. You were busy, you weren't ready, the timing wasn't right. But underneath the explanation is a quieter truth. You were scared, and you let that fear dress up as practicality. The pain of watching years pass without real progress is a specific kind of suffering. It's not dramatic, it's not a crisis. It's just the slow realization that you're the same person you were 3 years ago, with the same unrealized ideas, the same unfinished projects, the same vague plans for someday. And every year that passes makes it harder to start, because now you're not just starting, you're also confronting all the time you wasted not starting. Then there's the regret of knowing you had ideas you never tested. You'll never know if they would have worked. You'll never know what doors they might have opened. You'll never know who you could have become if you just moved. And that not knowing haunts you more than any failure ever could. Because failure gives you data. Delay gives you nothing but questions. The illusion of productivity. Overthinking feels productive. It feels like you're doing something. You're analyzing, you're strategizing, you're considering all the angles. But most of the time, you're just burning energy in a loop that goes nowhere. Thinking about doing something is not the same as doing it, and your brain knows the difference, even if you pretend it doesn't. There's this illusion that if you just gather enough information, you'll reach certainty. You'll know exactly what to do and exactly how to do it, and then action will be easy. But that certainty never comes. There's always one more article to read, one more person to ask, one more scenario to consider. You're not waiting for certainty. You're hiding from uncertainty. And uncertainty is the price of admission for anything worth doing. Every time you delay, you take a confidence hit. You make a promise to yourself and then break it. You set a deadline and then ignore it. You say, this time will be different, and then it isn't. And each broken promise teaches your brain not to trust you. You start to see yourself as someone who doesn't follow through, someone who talks but doesn't act, someone whose word, even to yourself, doesn't mean much. Repeated hesitation trains you to see yourself as a procrastinator. Repeated action trains you to see yourself as someone who executes, and identity feeds back into your choices. If you believe you're a procrastinator, you'll act like one. If you believe you're someone who moves, you'll move. The pattern reinforces itself, up or down, based on what you do today. The maybe later trap. You need to start catching yourself when you make vague commitments. I'll get to that soon. I'll think about it. I should probably do that at some point. These aren't commitments. They're delay tactics disguised as intention. Replace them with specifics or admit you're not doing it. I'll do this on Tuesday at 2 p.m. Or I'm not doing this. No middle ground. Cut the open-ended promises you know you won't keep. Stop telling yourself you'll eventually learn that language. Start that business. Write that book. Have that conversation. If you're not scheduling it, you're not doing it. And if you're not doing it, stop pretending you are. The mental clutter of fake commitments is exhausting. Refuse to comfort yourself with imaginary future action. Your brain loves this trick. It lets you feel good about a decision without actually making it. You imagine yourself taking action, and your brain releases a little dopamine hit as if you already did. But imagining isn't doing, and the more you rehearse action in your head, the less likely you are to take it in reality. The perfection prison. You think that once you find the perfect plan, you'll execute. But plans always collide with reality. The moment you start, you'll discover things you couldn't have known from planning. You'll hit obstacles you didn't anticipate. You'll realize your assumptions were wrong. That's not a failure of planning. That's just how reality works. The trap of endless research and getting ready is seductive because it feels responsible. You're being thorough. You're being smart. You're not rushing in unprepared. But there's a difference between preparation and procrastination. Preparation has a deadline. Procrastination doesn't. Planning is a tool, not a destination. You plan enough to take the first step. Then you take the first step. Then you plan the next step based on what you learned. Planning without action is just fantasy. Action without planning is just chaos. You need both in rhythm, not one instead of the other. You might tell yourself you're just a thinker, not a doer. That label becomes a shield against risk. It protects you from the discomfort of trying and failing. But the truth is, everyone can take small actions. You don't need to be a different person. You just need to do one small thing, then another, then another. Thought and action aren't separate categories of people. They're separate modes you can choose. And here's the big one. You think if you wait, you'll feel more motivated later. But motivation usually follows action, not the other way around. You don't feel like going for a walk, then go. You go, then feel better, then want to go again. The feeling comes after the movement. Waiting for motivation is like waiting for a bus that isn't coming. You have to start walking. The system that breaks the freeze. Start with the 2-minute rule. If a task takes under 2 minutes, do it immediately. Reply to that message. File that paper. Make that call. Don't add it to a list. Don't save it for later. Just do it. This builds a reflex of moving now, not later, and it clears the small tasks that otherwise pile up and create the illusion of overwhelming busyness. For bigger tasks, use tiny first reps. Break the scary thing into a laughably small first step. Don't write the whole report. Open the document. Don't launch the business. Send one email. Don't overhaul your life. Do one push-up. Treat completion of that first step as a full win, because it is. The hardest part of any task is starting. Once you're in motion, momentum helps. Set decision deadlines. Not, I'll think about it. Not, I'll see how I feel. Pick a specific date and time by which you will decide. Use simple criteria. If there's no strong reason against it, you proceed. Then review the outcomes over time to refine your decision instincts. This turns decisions from emotional events into scheduled tasks. The momentum tricks. Commit to working on something for just 10 minutes. Tell yourself you can stop after 10 minutes if you really want to. Often, momentum will carry you further. But even if it doesn't, 10 minutes is better than 0. And 10 minutes repeated daily becomes hours. Hours become weeks. Weeks become finished projects. When you're stuck, ask yourself, what would the bold version of me do? Visualize that person, not some fantasy superhero, just a slightly braver version of you. Then act as if you were them for the next small step. Send the message they would send. Make the call they would make. Take the risk they would take. Let repeated bold micro-actions shape your real identity. You become the bold version by acting like them, not by waiting to feel like them. Keep a done list. At the end of each day, write down what you actually did, not what you planned to do, not what you wish you'd done, what you did. Use this to see progress you'd otherwise ignore. Build pride in execution, not just intention. Your to-do list shows what you haven't done. Your done list shows what you have. One drains you, one fuels you. What victory looks like. At first, you'll just notice fewer lingering tasks hanging over your head. Slightly more finished projects and follow-through. Less guilt at the end of the day because you actually did the thing you said you'd do. That's good. Then it gets better. You'll routinely start quickly and adjust as you go. People will begin to trust your word because you act on it. Your backlog will shrink. You'll experience more closure, more completion, more evidence that you're someone who finishes what they start. That's excellent. But the best outcome? You see yourself as a powerful executor, not a chronic overthinker. Big goals stop feeling impossible because you've learned to break them into manageable tasks. You create opportunities and results that once felt out of reach, not because you got smarter or luckier, because you stopped delaying and started moving. When it goes wrong, you'll overcorrect. You'll go from doing nothing to trying to do everything at once. You'll burn out in a sprint of manic productivity and then crash back into delay. When that happens, scale back. Focus on 1 or 2 key actions per day. Prioritize recovery as strongly as effort. Sustainable execution beats heroic bursts. Your early attempts will look bad. Messy first drafts, clumsy execution, embarrassing mistakes. You'll feel discouraged. But reframe those ugly first tries as necessary tuition. You're paying the cost of learning. Look for lessons in each attempt instead of judgments. What worked? What didn't? What will you try next? And you'll slip back into planning mode. You'll start building complex systems instead of doing the work. When that happens, pair each planning session with at least one concrete action. And ask yourself, what am I avoiding by planning right now? Usually the answer is discomfort, and discomfort is the price of growth. Your life will not change because you thought about changing it. It will change because you moved, one small, imperfect step at a time, starting now, not someday. But even after you've started moving, there's one final story you're carrying that will quietly sabotage everything you build. A story so deeply embedded, you might not even recognize it as removable. Chapter 8. Rewrite yourself. You've been carrying a story about yourself for so long, you don't even question it anymore. Maybe it's, I'm not a morning person. Maybe it's, I'm bad with money. Maybe it's, I'm just not the kind of person who... Fill in the blank. You say it casually, like it's a fact about the universe. like it's written in your DNA, like it's permanent. But here's what you don't realize. That story isn't describing you, it's creating you. Every time you repeat it, you reinforce it. Every time you act in line with it, you prove it. And every time you consider doing something different, that story whispers, that's not who you are. So you don't. You stay inside the lines of the identity you've been carrying around like a prison you built yourself. The truth, you're not stuck with that story. You never were. You just believed you were. And that belief has been costing you more than you know. The invisible ceiling. Your identity is your performance ceiling. You rarely act far outside your self-image for long. You might have a burst of motivation. You might try something new for a week or two. But eventually, you snap back to what feels like you. Not because you're weak, not because you lack discipline, but because the behavior didn't match the identity. If you see yourself as the messy one, keeping things organized will always feel like pretending. You'll do it for a while, but it won't stick because it doesn't feel authentic. If you see yourself as the victim, taking responsibility will feel wrong, uncomfortable, like you're betraying your own story. So you'll drift back to blaming, even when you know it's hurting you. Childhood labels and roles still shape your adult choices in ways you don't notice. You are the smart one, or the athletic one, or the responsible one, or the troublemaker. And decades later, you're still playing that role, still living up or down to a label someone gave you when you were 8. Past failures become permanent identity statements. You tried something once, it didn't work, and now you say, I'm just not good at that. As if one data point defines your entire capacity forever. The danger of letting outdated stories drive current behavior is that you end up living someone else's script. Your parents' script, your culture's script, your younger self's script. But not yours, not the person you could become if you stopped defending who you used to be. The labels you need to drop. Start paying attention to how you talk about yourself. I'm shy, I'm lazy, I'm bad with money, I'm not creative, I'm not a leader. These aren't neutral observations, they're identity claims. And identity claims become self-fulfilling prophecies. Notice where you say I am instead of I've been acting like. There's a difference. I am disorganized is a fixed label. I've been acting disorganized is a behavior you can change. One traps you, one frees you. Replace absolute labels with flexible, growth-focused language. Instead of I'm bad at public speaking, try I'm learning to speak more confidently in groups. Instead of I'm not a morning person, try I'm experimenting with earlier wake times. The shift sounds small, but it's massive. One version says you're broken, the other says you're in progress. Then there are the family and social scripts. In our family, we don't talk about feelings. People like us never take risks. We're not the kind of people who, these scripts run deep. They feel like loyalty, like honoring where you came from. But there's a difference between honoring your past and being trapped by it. You can be grateful for your roots and still grow beyond them. Your growth doesn't erase your history. It doesn't make you better than your family or community. It just means you're choosing which parts of the script to keep and which to rewrite. You're allowed to evolve. You're allowed to become someone your younger self didn't imagine. That's not betrayal. That's freedom. The myths keeping you small. You probably think, this is just who I am. That sentence shuts down growth faster than anything else. It's a conversation ender, a door closer, a way to avoid the discomfort of change by pretending change isn't possible. But you have evidence that you've changed before. You're not the same person you were at 15. You're not the same person you were 5 years ago. You've changed in big ways and small ways, whether you noticed or not. Your tastes changed, your beliefs changed, your habits changed. So the idea that your identity is fixed, it's fiction. Identity is a story, not a prison. And stories can be rewritten. You might also think that if you change, you'll betray your roots. But your growth can benefit your family or community. When you level up, you bring others with you, if they're willing. You model what's possible. You show that change doesn't mean abandonment. You hold gratitude for where you came from while still evolving into who you're becoming. And then there's the myth that reinvention needs a huge life event. Movies glamorize dramatic pivots. The person who quits their job, moves to another country, and starts over. But real life rarely works that way. Real reinvention happens through micro changes, daily behavior shifts, small identity upgrades you choose now without waiting for a crisis to force your hand. The rewrite process. Start with an identity phrase audit. For 1 week, notice every sentence you say or think that starts with "I am" or "I'm just the kind of person who." Write them down. Then ask yourself, who gave me this label? Was it a parent, a teacher, a peer, a younger version of myself after one bad experience? Decide which labels serve you and which don't. Then do a reality check. Look for counterexamples where you acted differently than the label suggests. If you say "I'm lazy," find a time when you worked hard. If you say "I'm not creative," find a time when you solved a problem in a novel way. Use those moments as proof that the label isn't absolute. It's just a story you've been telling. And stories can change. Reframe your labels into process statements. "I'm disorganized" becomes "I'm learning to build better systems." "I'm bad with money" becomes "I'm improving my financial habits." "I'm not confident" becomes "I'm practicing courage in small ways." The reframe doesn't deny reality. It just refuses to make reality permanent. Now choose one upgraded identity per month, not 10, one. Maybe it's reliable, maybe it's focused, maybe it's courageous. Define 1 to 3 small daily actions that prove that identity. If you want to be reliable, keep one small promise to yourself every day. If you want to be focused, protect 1 hour of deep work. If you want to be courageous, do one thing that scares you slightly. Track completion. Gather evidence for the new story. Your brain needs proof. It won't believe the new identity just because you declared it. It will believe it when you show it, repeatedly, that you're acting like that person. The daily identity practice. Use present tense identity tags. Short phrases like, "I am someone who keeps small promises to myself," or "I am someone who finishes what I start." Repeat them before key situations, before a workout, before a difficult conversation, before sitting down to work. Then align your next move with the tag, not the old story. Surround yourself with people who've reinvented themselves. Seek examples of those who shed old identities and built new ones. Let their stories normalize change instead of making it scary. Use them as inspiration, not comparison. Their path doesn't have to be your path, but their existence proves that change is possible. Keep an evidence moments journal. Capture times when you acted like your upgraded self. The day you said no when you used to say yes. The day you started when you used to delay. The day you stayed calm when you used to spiral. Review these moments when old labels resurface. Use them as proof to argue against your own limiting beliefs. What winning looks like. At first, you'll just notice less attachment to your worst moments or traits. A bit more flexibility in how you see yourself. Occasional surprise at how differently you respond to familiar triggers. You'll catch yourself acting out of character, except the out-of-character behavior is actually closer to who you want to be. That's good. Then it gets better. You'll see consistent behavior aligned with the kind of person you want to be. New opportunities will appear because you no longer self-reject before trying. People will notice and reflect back your growth. They'll say things like, "You've changed," and you'll realize they're right. That's excellent. But the best outcome? Reinvention becomes normal. Change stops terrifying you. You pivot careers, relationships, habits with confidence and intentionality. You become the author of your identity, not the passive reader. You stop asking, "Is this who I am?" and start asking, "Is this who I'm becoming?" And that shift changes everything. When it gets hard, you'll feel like an imposter. When you act like your upgraded self, it will feel fake at first. That's normal. Expect the awkward phase. It's a sign you're changing, not a sign you're failing. Focus on actions, not feelings, until the identity catches up. You don't wait to feel confident before acting confident. You act confident, and the feeling follows. Some people will resist your growth. They'll tease you. They'll question your new behaviors. They'll try to pull you back into the old role because your change threatens their comfort. Stay calm and consistent. Let your actions outlast their comments. And if they refuse to respect your growth, reduce your time with them. Not everyone deserves a front row seat to your transformation. You'll also be tempted to overreach. You'll declare huge, unrealistic identity shifts you can't back up. I'm a millionaire entrepreneur when you haven't started a business yet. I'm a marathon runner when you haven't run a mile. Scale down to smaller, believable identity improvements. I'm someone who's building a business. I'm someone who's training consistently. Anchor every identity statement in a concrete daily action. The action makes the identity real. The final removal. You've cut the takers. You've reclaimed your time. You've stopped comparing. You've dropped the victim story. You've cleared the noise. You've killed the delay. And now you're rewriting the story of who you are. This is the final removal, the deepest one, the one that makes all the others stick. Because you can change your environment, your habits, your circle, but if you don't change your identity, you'll drift back. You'll rebuild the clutter. You'll let the takers back in. You'll start delaying again. Not because you're weak, but because you're acting like the old version of you. Change your identity, and everything else becomes easier. You're not forcing yourself to act differently. You're just being who you are, and who you are is no longer who you were. Now there's only one thing left, pulling it all together and deciding what happens next. Chapter 9, Quiet Power. You made it here. That matters more than you think. Most people never finish what they start. They read the first chapter, nod along, feel a spark of recognition, and then let the book gather dust while life pulls them back into the same patterns. But you didn't. You stayed. You read about cutting takers, owning your time, stopping comparison, dropping the victim story, clearing the noise, killing the delay, and rewriting yourself. And now you're here, at the end, which means you're ready for the beginning. Because this isn't the end of anything. This is where your life splits into two possible timelines. In one, you close this book, feel inspired for a day or two, and then drift back into the overload. In the other, you close this book and make one small, quiet move that changes everything. The difference between those timelines isn't dramatic. It's not a grand gesture or a life-altering decision. It's just one removal, one boundary, one choice to protect what matters. The question is, which timeline do you choose? What you've learned to remove. Let's recap what you now know how to cut from your life. You've learned to remove takers and drama from your circle, the people who drain your energy, manipulate your guilt, and show up only when they need something. You've learned to spot them, measure their cost, and quietly reduce their access without needing a confrontation or a dramatic exit. You've learned to remove fake urgency and automatic yes from your schedule. You've seen how people-pleasing and constant availability silently destroy your capacity for the work that actually matters. You've learned to pause before committing, to protect your golden hours, and to treat your time like the non-refundable resource it is. You've learned to remove comparison and external validation as your main scoreboard. You've seen how measuring yourself against everyone else's highlight reel steals your joy, slows your action, and keeps you performing for strangers instead of building for yourself. You've learned to shift from other-referenced to self-referenced progress, turning your life into a game you can actually win. You've learned to remove victim mindset and blame loops from your thinking. You've seen how staying stuck in "why me" freezes your problem-solving and keeps you rehearsing powerlessness. You've learned to shift to "what now" and reclaim the leverage that's always been there, even in situations you didn't cause and don't deserve. You've learned to remove physical, digital, and mental clutter from your environment. You've seen how every pile, tab, and open loop quietly taxes your attention and makes every decision harder. You've learned to design spaces that reduce friction instead of relying on willpower to overcome chaos. You've learned to remove someday thinking, perfectionism, and overthinking from your habits. You've seen how delay dressed up as preparation keeps you stuck in planning mode forever. You've learned to take tiny first steps, set decision deadlines, and build a bias for action that turns ideas into results. And you've learned to remove old identity labels and limiting stories from your self-image. You've seen how "this is just who I am" becomes a prison that keeps you playing small. You've learned to rewrite your identity one small proof at a time, letting action lead and feelings follow. The core process is simple. Spot the drain, decide what to do, remove it quietly, and reinforce the change. That's it. No complicated system, no 12-step program, just honest awareness, clear decisions, and consistent action. The power you've gained. Here's what all of this gives you: control over your inputs. You now understand that what you allow in shapes what comes out. You can deliberately choose what influences your energy and decisions. You feel less at the mercy of circumstance and more in charge. That shift from reactive to intentional is the foundation of everything else. You've also gained confidence in your own choices. You've practiced saying no without guilt. You've seen yourself follow through on quiet changes. You trust yourself more because you've backed your decisions with action. And that self-trust compounds. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, the next promise becomes easier to keep. And you've gained the freedom to design your life. You know how to clear space for what matters. You're not waiting for permission or a perfect moment. You can iterate your life like a project instead of enduring it like a sentence. You're no longer a passenger. You're the driver. How your relationships will change. Your relationships will improve in ways you didn't expect. You'll have higher standards and better connections. You no longer tolerate chronic takers and manipulators. You naturally invite and keep people who respect your boundaries. Your circle becomes smaller but stronger. Quality over quantity stops being a cliche and starts being your lived reality. You'll experience less resentment and more honesty. You say what you mean more often, instead of silently stewing and hoping people will guess your needs. You set expectations clearly. Conflict becomes cleaner, shorter, and more productive because you're not carrying weeks of unspoken frustration into every conversation. And you'll show up with more authentic presence. Without comparison, you show up as yourself, not a performance. Without victim stories, you relate as an equal, not a martyr. Without clutter and chaos, you have more emotional space for the people who actually deserve your attention. You become the kind of person others want to be around, not because you're perfect, but because you're real. What you can now achieve: you can start and finish important projects. You have the time and energy you used to give away. You can take imperfect action without waiting for someday. You can sustain momentum because your environment supports you instead of sabotaging you. The ideas that used to sit in your head for years can now move into reality in weeks. You can walk away from what drains you. You can quietly leave unhealthy situations without public drama. You can protect your peace without over-explaining yourself. You can choose your company instead of just accepting whoever shows up. That freedom, the freedom to leave, is one of the most underrated forms of power. And you can build a life that feels good inside. Less chaos, more calm. Less noise, more clarity. Work, relationships, and habits aligned with your real values. A sense of being the main character in your life again, not a supporting actor in everyone else's drama. The compounding effect. Here's the part most people miss. This gets easier over time, not harder. Each small removal frees a bit more energy and focus. Over months and years, these bits add up to major life shifts. You experience exponential benefits from seemingly small decisions. This isn't linear, it's compounding. Saying no, setting boundaries, decluttering, and acting decisively become automatic. Your identity stabilizes around, "I'm someone who protects my peace and power." Less conscious effort is required because the new way becomes your default. You stop fighting yourself. You stop needing willpower for every decision. You just act like the person you've become. And spotting new drains becomes second nature. You adjust faster when life changes or new challenges appear. Your life keeps getting lighter, clearer, and more aligned with you. This isn't a one-time fix. It's a self-improving system that gets better the longer you use it. Your first move. So what do you do now? Choose one category. Pick the one that stings the most. People, time, comparison, victimhood, clutter, delay, or identity. Don't overthink it. Go with your gut reaction. Whichever one made you uncomfortable while reading, that's the one. Commit to focusing on that one for the next week. Make one quiet cut or shift. Downgrade one draining relationship. Decline one fake urgency pattern. Unfollow one comparison trigger. Interrupt one blame loop. Clear one cluttered surface. Take one tiny first step you've been delaying. Reframe one limiting identity label. Write down exactly what you'll do and when, then do it quietly, without a big announcement. Observe the aftermath. Notice how you feel in the days after the change. Capture any gains in energy, time, or peace. Let that small win convince you to keep going, because it will. One removal leads to another. One boundary makes the next one easier. One action builds the identity that makes future action automatic. The invisible turning point. Your new baseline starts today. You don't need a new year, a crisis, or permission. This moment, right now, as you read these words, can be the invisible turning point no one else sees. The moment you decided to stop tolerating what you've been tolerating. The moment you chose yourself and your future over comfort and familiarity. Quiet choices made now will shape loud results later. The person you'll be a year from now is being built by the decisions you make today. The life you'll be living 5 years from now is being designed by the boundaries you set this week. Nobody will see it happening. There won't be applause, there won't be a ceremony, but you'll know. And that's enough. You're allowed to outgrow your old life. You don't have to justify wanting more peace, clarity, or power. You're not selfish for protecting your energy. You're not cruel for cutting what drains you. You're not arrogant for believing you can change. You're responsible for your future, and you're worthy of a better one. One final challenge. Before the day ends, remove one small thing that doesn't belong in your future. One contact you need to mute. One commitment you need to decline. One pile you need to clear. One delay you need to kill. One story you need to rewrite. Treat it as a handshake with the stronger version of you, the version who doesn't tolerate what the old version accepted, the version who moves instead of waits, the version who chooses instead of endures. Then keep going, quietly, consistently, without needing validation or applause, because your life is too important to leave crowded with things that don't deserve you. Your attention is too valuable to spend on people who don't respect it. Your time is too finite to waste on fake urgencies and someday thinking. Your identity is too powerful to trap in old labels and outdated stories. You've spent years adding. Now you know how to subtract. And subtraction, the quiet, deliberate removal of what doesn't serve you, is how you reclaim your life. This is your quiet power. Use it.